Hello.
Yeah, sir. Sunai de raha sir. Audible.
Yes. Hello. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Welcome everybody and good evening. We have today is a very important meeting of RSSDI coordinator meeting for the management of diabetes. Our speaker is Dr. Sandeep Tak. Am I right?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
And chairpersons, Dr. Khimsera. So I hand over to Dr. Khimsera for the further proceedings. Chairpersons, Dr. Khimsera. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Welcome,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you very much, all the delegates. Today's speaker is Dr. Sandeep Tak. Sandeep Tak did his MBBS MD from AIIMS, Delhi, and he did his PG diploma in clinical endo and diabetes. He is a member of American Academy of Clinical Endocrinology, member of RSSDI, and member of API. He is a consultant diabetologist and consultant physician and senior professor of medicine in Department of Medicine, Dr. S.N. Medical College, Jodhpur. He has several publications and presentations in international and national journals and conferences. I hand over the mic to Dr. Sandeep Tak for his talk today.
Sir, before starting this lecture, I request Dr. Arimutha sir, that is the aim of this district coordinator meeting.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
इसके क्षमा से just joining.
Yeah.
तो पता नहीं था आज बुधवार है, वो मंगलवार सोच रहे थे. आप थोड़ा brief में बता दें सर.
Okay.
5 मिनट उसके बाद start करते हैं सर.
Yeah.
जी सर.
Thank you, Dr. GD. Thank you, Dr. Khimsera, Dr. Sandeep Tak, and all my esteemed colleagues. The purpose of today's Train the Trainer program and the regarding the RSSDI wheel is very, very important for the management of type 2 diabetes. This is very important from the point of view of not only for the management of type 2 diabetes, but it should be a uniform all over the country. This is the dream of National RSSDI to be well versed with the RSSDI wheel for the diabetes management, not only for the city dwellers or city doctors or the medical college doctors, but also to the peripheral doctors who are not very well versed with the recent advances of the type 2 diabetes management. Hence, this wheel was created by the National RSSDI stalwarts, and this is very simple wheel to remember how we can go with the, start the medications for the type 2 diabetes. So this is very important, and I think Dr. Sandeep Tak will give you all the details about this thing, but this is our endeavor to go to the most peripheral doctors, CSC, PSC, or all the doctors in the district. So that is the aim of the program today. I hope everybody will be benefited with the today's program, and Dr. Sandeep Tak will definitely give all the details about the RSSDI wheel for the management of type 2 diabetes. It consists of so many aspects before we prescribe the different drugs. So I think with this brief introduction about the program, this is the RSSDI DREAM program of coordinators and the Train the Trainer programs. I invite Dr. Sandeep Tak to deliver his lecture regarding the RSSDI wheel. Dr. Sandeep Tak, you can share your slides and please present.
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir. It's my pleasure for being here with you, so many senior people and dear friends. As Dr. Arvind Gupta ji just mentioned, today we would be discussing about clinical practice guidelines that has been developed by RSSDI in collaboration with ESI. These are the Indian guidelines. That's a very important thing. because why we need an Indian guideline is because Indians are different than the rest of the peoples. Just a minute, I can't change my slides. We Indians are different from the Caucasians. That's why we need different guidelines. But please hold on, I have to change.
You click on the slide and then I think.
No, it's not going here. Changing, it's not changing. Yeah. So basically, RSSDI in collaboration with the ESI has developed these guidelines. And the purpose for these guidelines is that as an Indian, we need our own guidelines because in Indian context, there are so many other factors that becomes more relevant for the management of the type 2 diabetes. So we would be discussing important factors which matters in the Indian context, on which basis these guidelines and this RSSDI wheel has been developed. As we all know, India is a country with high prevalence of diabetes and type 2 diabetes. Almost 8 to 10% of the adult population over 20 probably suffers from the diabetes, and half of them doesn't know they have a diabetes. And onset of type 2 diabetes in India is much earlier than the Western countries, almost 1 to 1.5 decades earlier than the Western countries. We have a more of a complication because we start diabetes early. That's why we have a more of a complication. And complications are also a bit different. To say that Indian people are more likely to develop a peripheral neuropathy in the feet, whereas the Western or Caucasian people are more likely to develop a peripheral vascular disease. So there are things, different things. And we have a large rural population, and which is changing very rapidly. And that's these lifestyle changes in the rural population is rapidly leading to the increased prevalence and incidence of the diabetes in that population also. And very fast, this gap between the rural and urban is closing down. And in the urban, in the metro cities, we have much more higher incidence and prevalence of the type 2 diabetes. Reason we all know, changing sedentary lifestyle and physical inactivity. And another thing that to be considered while prescribing the treatment in Indian context is limited resources or finances that our patients have, because most of our patients spend from their pocket. So this limited resources is very important thing, and we have to consider while prescribing the medications to the diabetic patients. Any diabetes management, as we all know, starts with the medical nutritional therapy and lifestyle modification. Nutritional counseling can be provided by anybody, not necessarily a dietitian or a trained nutrition. A trained nursing staff or a doctor himself can provide a brief counseling about the nutrition. Overall, what we should stress is reducing the consumption of the simple carbohydrate, sugar, and fried fruits. And we should encourage the consumption of the complex carbohydrate with the higher protein intake. Salt intake definitely has to be in moderation, less than 5 grams per day, because almost 50% of the diabetic patients are underlying hypertensive. So we need a salt restriction also. Apart from that, changing the lifestyle, encouraging the exercise duration and physical activity is very important in the diabetic patients, and that matters in the management of the diabetes also. Apart from that, mass awareness campaign for the healthy diet, lifestyle, and for the early diagnosis is very important, so that we don't miss the diabetic patients. For that, I think that RSSDI National is already conducting a Defeat Diabetes campaign for 100 days, and almost 50 days are over for that, and that's going on very well. What are the recommendations for the nutrition in the patients with the diabetes? These are the typical recommendations for the medical nutritional therapy in diabetics. Carbohydrate should be restricted to 50% of the caloric intake ideally, and the carbohydrate should be complex carbohydrate. We should be avoiding simple carbohydrates, and again, rice quantity should be limited, and increased fiber intake should be encouraged to the tune of 25 to 40 grams per day. So limiting the carbohydrate to 50 to 60% of the total calorie, ideally it should be less than 50. That would be better. Coming to the fat should be restricted to 30% of the total caloric intake, And out of that, 10%, less than 10% should come from the saturated fatty acids like the butter or ghee, that we should be stressing to our patients. As far as oils are concerned, oil should be used in the moderation. There is no specific oil that we RSSDI recommend. Recommendation is that we should rotate oil every 2 to 3 months, because each oil has their pros and cons. They have benefits, and more important thing is totally avoid hydrogenated vegetable oil as far as possible. Apart from that, next comes the protein. Protein is a very important thing, and currently in current situation, and there are many recommendations that a good protein diet along with the limited carbohydrate diet improves the glycemic control and helps the patients. Here we recommend 15% of the total caloric intake in the form of protein, or roughly around 0.8 gram per kilogram per day. We have to consider other comorbidities like the renal status in such patients, obviously. And in the protein, we ask the patient to avoid the red meat because it's not cardiovascular healthy. Otherwise, we can ask them to get a preferred other sources of the protein like the legumes, beans, eggs, paneer, etc. Yeah, that would be the ideal way. So basically, what we are suggesting that diet rich in the fruits, leafy vegetables, nuts, whole grains, complex carbohydrates, and unsaturated fat in the moderation. These are the recommendations, with the salt consumption less than 5 grams per day. Many patients ask about the artificial sweeteners. Definitely, we can say them to take it in moderation, less than 2 to 3 grams per day. As such, there is no harm, but there are few studies which suggest that it may have an impact on the insulin resistance also. So in the moderation, artificial sweeteners are okay. So basically, apart from the nutrition, a next important thing is to advise about the physical activity. All patients should be advised 30 minutes of a moderate intensity aerobic activity per day, like a brisk walking or treadmill, that would be advisable. Apart from that, 15 to 30 minutes of the work-related activity. It is very important. Once we start work, we keep on sitting on the desk for a long period of time. And that's a very unhealthy situation. And it's called as a current, it's just equivalent to smoking, like a bad effects. So basically, whenever you are working, we should be asking the patient to take a break after 1 hour or so and walk for 5 to 10 minutes, take a lift instead of take a stairs instead of lift, and all those things. And apart from that, muscle strengthening exercise or isometric exercise is also important. It is advisable at 15 minutes at least 3 times a week. Important thing is that it builds the muscle mass, that improves the glucose uptake and reduces the insulin intake. And in that way, it can improve the glycemic control also. So these are the basic lifestyle changes which we should be advising to our patients. Ultimately, aim of the RSSDI therapeutic wheel is to individualize the treatment depending upon the various factors which are important in the management of the diabetes. So RSSDI has decided that these 8 factors are very important in the management of the diabetes. That has been called as ABCD EFGH approach. Here A stands for the advancing age, B stands for the BMI, C stands for the chronic kidney disease, D stands for the duration of the diabetes, E stands for the established cardiovascular disease, F for the financial conditions, G for the glycemic state, and H for the hypoglycemic concerns. So these 8 are the important factors on which basis usually we decide what treatment to prescribe to the patient. So RSSDI wheel simplifies the selection of the drugs depending upon these factors. This is the RSSDI wheel, which has been now, I think this is the most important slide of this talk, and we have to understand this in detail clearly so that it becomes very clear what are the most important things to take. Take home is, in the center we have a black circle, that is the lifestyle modification that has to be prescribed to the each and every diabetic patients. Lifestyle modification, just that we discussed. Next, blue circle stands for the metformin. Metformin should be used in all type 2 diabetic patients except when it is clearly contraindicated. A condition like a chronic kidney disease, or if patient is totally intolerant to the metformin, then we should avoid it. Otherwise, metformin is indicated in each and every type 2 diabetic patients. After that, these 8 factors that we discussed comes in this RSSDI wheel, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. So basically, after this 8 factors, we have green circle. It means these factors are not significant. If these factors are not significant in the green circle, then all available anti-diabetic drugs can be used. Next comes the yellow or orange circle, in which we have some concerns about these factors. Say patient is in the A, patient has an age of 65. That may be of some concern, so accordingly we decide. And suppose age is 75 plus, then it comes to the red circle, and accordingly we decide it. In this circle, we have a drugs that has been mentioned, and here we go clockwise. First drug that is available is a drug of choice. Say in the advanced stage, DPP-4 inhibitor is the drug of choice. Next, second drug of choice would be alpha glucosidase inhibitor. After that, third drug of choice would be short-acting sulfonylurea, and this like that. So basically, we go clockwise depending upon the situation and the factor, and in that way, basically, drugs has to be prescribed to the patients. So this is the very important thing in this management of the diabetes. I will discuss individual factors one by one. So basically, purpose of this ABCDEFGH approach is individualized therapy in the patients, looking at the patient's general health status and associated medical conditions. We will be discussing them. So first line of therapy, as I talked, is metformin in each and every patient unless it is explicitly contraindicated or patient is not able to tolerate the metformin. After that, we add other drugs. So coming to the first factor, A, that's age. In the patients particularly with the advancing age, we have to be very careful about prescribing certain drugs. That's what this table tries to highlight. Sulfonylurea are otherwise safe, but if the patient has a risk of hypoglycemia, sulfonylurea should be used with a caution, and a short-acting sulfonylurea should be preferred. DPP-4 inhibitor is perfectly safe in the elderly patients. Only thing is, if patient has a compromised renal function, you may need to adjust the doses of the DPP-4 inhibitors. Alpha glucosidase inhibitors are safe with modest efficacy. Side effects, we all know GI side effects are there with the alpha glucosidase inhibitors. SGLT2 inhibitors are a very good drug, provide the good glycemic control, and as most of the elderly patient has an underlying CV risk, so it reduces the CV risk also. So SGLT2 inhibitors are a very good drug in the elderly group, but we have to look for the certain situations in which we would like to avoid SGLT2 inhibitors, like a patient who has a frequent postural hypotension or symptoms of the postural hypotension, patients who are very thin-built, very frail elderly. In such patients, it can cause a further weight loss and create a problem. And patients who had a risk for recurrent genital mycotic infections, in such patients, SGLT2 inhibitors should be avoided. Otherwise, it's a very preferred drug. Pioglitazone or glitazone definitely can be used in the patients, elderly patients. It reduces the CV risk again. But one concern is the cardiac safety, particularly in the patients with the compromised cardiac function or compromised ejection fraction. In such patients, we should be avoiding glitazones. Otherwise, it can be used. But another important thing is elderly females. In elderly females, glitazones are known to cause osteoporosis and osteoporotic fractures. So post-menopausal female, glitazone should be avoided. We can use male if there are no contraindications. Insulin analogs, basal insulin, we may need if required. GLP-1 agonist definitely can be used. Only issue is the cost and discomfort of the injection. So these are the drugs according to the risk of the and age we should be using in type 2 diabetics. Next important concern is a B or BMI. So basically our concern is if patient is a very obese or have a very high BMI, in such patients we should be prescribing a drug which are either weight neutral or causes the weight loss. So now we have two very good drugs which have a very good efficacy in the obese patient. That includes the SGLT2 inhibitors and the GLP-1 agonist. Both causes the weight loss, and in fact, the GLP-1 agonist has been approved just for the weight loss, irrespective of the diabetic status also. So these two drugs are very good in reducing the weight. So in obese patients, these two drugs should be preferred over other drugs until unless they are contraindicated. Alpha glucosidase inhibitors are the weight neutral. DPP-4 inhibitors are the weight neutral or maybe some weight loss. Newer sulfonylurea usually does not cause weight gain. Insulin, as we all know, causes the weight gain. So try to avoid insulin as far as possible in obese patients. Otherwise, ultimately, we definitely have to use it if required, but that should be the last choice. Coming to the next third important factor that that's the chronic kidney disease. Chronic kidney disease is a very important, particularly in treating with the diabetic patients, but because it's a very important complication of diabetes. In early stage, patient may be having just a macroalbuminuria or microalbuminuria. In such cases, we don't need to modify much of the drugs, but we know certain drugs are renoprotective effects. That includes the DPP-4 inhibitors that reduces the albuminuria. We have SGLT2 inhibitors, which are now coming very rapidly in the renal failure, even without diabetes. And GLP-1 agonist, again, a renoprotective effect. So here, the SGLT2 inhibitors are the best choice if possible. They should be used. Metformin, we would like to discuss in the context of chronic kidney disease, because just previously we discussed that metformin is contraindicated in advanced chronic kidney disease. So basically, if eGFR is less than 30, we should be avoiding metformin. If eGFR is 45 to 59, we can use all the drugs with some caution. If eGFR is between 30 to 44, most astute thing is not to initiate a metformin if patient is not already on the metformin, or if we are planning to start, give metformin maximum dose of 1000 milligram per day. Or if patient is already on the 50% this metformin, and we detect the GFR of say 35, we reduce the dose 50% metformin dose, and renal function should be followed for every 3 months. That's an important thing to consider while prescribing the metformin in the patients with the compromised renal function. Short-acting sulfonylureas like glipizide and gliclazide can be prescribed in the moderate to severe renal impairment in the low doses, basically. Similarly, glimepiride can also be prescribed in the low doses with the mild to moderate impairment. Basically, in these conditions, if creatinine is something less than 2, we can use the sulfonylurea safely in the low doses. That's not an issue. Alpha glucosidase inhibitors are renal safe. But if the eGFR is less than 30, or if creatinine is more than 10, it should be avoided because it tends to accumulate in these patients. DPP-4 inhibitors are renal safe, perfectly renal safe. Any of the DPP-4 inhibitor can be used. Only thing to remember is that except teneligliptin and linagliptin, rest of the DPP-4 inhibitors, we need to reduce the dose of drug. In the case of the teneligliptin and linagliptin, we need not adjust the dose of the DPP-4 inhibitors. Short-acting repaglinides can be used easily in the patient with the CKD. Pioglitazone again can be used in the patient with the CKD. It's not a contraindication, but if there is a fluid retention or congestive cardiac failure, pioglitazone should not be used. But otherwise, pioglitazone in a dry CKD patient who is not retaining any fluid, pioglitazone can be safely used. SGLT2 inhibitor, just I discussed, it's a preferred drug because it has a renoprotective actions. And nowadays, there are some trials coming up which shows that the SGLT2 inhibitors can be used in the CKD even without diabetes. So definitely it's a good drug for the CKD patients. GLP-1 agonist can be used up to the eGFR of the 15. But issue with the GLP-1 is, apart from the cost, most of the CKD patients have anorexia, nausea already. And GLP-1 agonist is known to cause these side effects. So probably most of the patients won't be tolerating it. And obviously, insulin can be used at any stage of the renal insufficiency, and we should not hesitate in using insulin and if it is required. Here, next factor is duration of the diabetes. D. It's very important thing, particularly in the, we discuss it in two phases, early phase and the late phase of the diabetes. In the early phase of the diabetes, it is very important to have a good glycemic control because of its legacy effect. Earlier, we have a very good or tight glycemic control for initial few years. It has a legacy effect over next 10 to 15 years and reduces the microvascular as well as the macrovascular complications, as we have seen in the UK-PDS trial. In such patients, early stage, we can definitely use sulfonylurea, metformin, or any other drug for the good glycemic control. To begin with, in early stage, when the say HbA1c is around 10, definitely we should start with the sulfonylurea and metformin. And once the HbA1c comes under control, we can withhold the sulfonylurea and add the newer drugs also in such patients. But in the patient who has a long-standing diabetes, who is already have a significant beta cell dysfunction, and therefore they are insulinopenic, these patients definitely require insulin supplementation. That's the first thing. Or that we can add other drugs which are insulin independent action, like SGLT2 inhibitors, alpha glucosidase inhibitors, or incretin-based therapy also we can use in such patients. But in the long-standing diabetes, sulfonylurea wouldn't be very helpful because already this beta cells are exhausted. So this is what view I was talking about, the UK-PDS legacy benefits. Even after 15 years of the UK-PDS trial, there was significant benefit in the microvascular and macrovascular complication. And even after 10 years follow-up, again, there was significant benefit of the early glycemic control in such patients. So early glycemic control reduces the later microvascular and macrovascular complications. E stands for the established cardiovascular disease. And it's a very important thing because diabetes itself is a very high risk to cause a cardiovascular disease. And it's almost many people agree it's a partly a vascular disease also, because most of the morbidity and mortality in diabetes is associated with cardiovascular disease. Here, GLP-1 analogs and SGLT2 inhibitors have definite proven efficacy in reducing the mortality, 3-point MACE, etc. So these are the drug of choice in the patient with established cardiovascular disease. In a patient with heart failure or CKD, SGLT2 or GLP-1 agonist may be preferred. Pioglitazone again is safe until unless patient has a heart failure or compromised heart function or reduced ejection fraction. Otherwise, pioglitazone is known to reduce the CV mortality and morbidity. Apart from that, DPP-4 inhibitors and this sulfonylureas can be used in the patients with the established cardiovascular disease. They are cardiovascular safe. But here, our first preference would be using the SGLT2 inhibitors, DPP-4/GLP-1 analogs. That should be the first drug of choice for the patients with the established cardiovascular disease or patient who has a high atherosclerotic cardiovascular risk. In such patients, SGLT2 inhibitor should be the drug of choice. And in India, ultimately, everything comes to the finances because we have a most of the patient has a financial constraints, and most of the patients are paying from their pocket for the treatment and for the investigation and everything. So basically, we have to be sensitive to the patient's financial status, and accordingly, we should be prescribing the treatment. Whatever the guidelines say, that are fine, but ultimately, if the financial concern is important, we have to tailor-made our prescription accordingly. And so here, sulfonylurea is a very good drug, which we have been using for last many decades with the metformin, and it is CV neutral. So definitely sulfonylurea with metformin can be used when there are financial concerns. Pioglitazone again can be used. For now, there are certain inexpensive DPP-4 inhibitors like the teneligliptin and now vildagliptin, and similarly newer inexpensive SGLT2 inhibitors like DAPA are also available. So we can use in the next step these drugs also. So finances, we have to be very concerned about the patient and treat accordingly. And next is a G for the glycemic state. When the glycemic control is worsening with the best of the oral anti-diabetic drugs, the best choice is insulin. There is no doubt about it. We should be using insulin To start with the long-acting insulin at the once a day, and later on, if required, maybe multiple injections of the insulin. But to begin with, the once a day long-acting insulin is preferable when the glycemic status is a concern and HbA1c is not controlled with the routine drugs. GLP-1 agonist again has a very good glycemic efficacy and reduces the A1C to the tune of up to 1.5. SGLT2 again has a very good glycemic efficacy. Pioglitazone has a good glycemic efficacy. So all these drugs can definitely be used, but ultimately most of the patients ultimately need the insulin when it is not controlled. We can add on other drugs and adjust accordingly, but insulin is the main drug when HbA1c is not well controlled. And finally, that's the but very important concern is hypoglycemia. H stands for the hypoglycemia. To say that if hypoglycemia is not a concern, then and we can use any drug without any tension, and patient, if a body can adjust to the minimum blood glucose level of 70 or 80 with whatever drug we are using, then it would be very easy. But hypoglycemia is definitely a problem. That's why we need to be very careful in the patients who are hypoglycemia prone. There are certain patients, particularly elderly patients who has a compromised renal function, patients who has a compromised hepatic function. These are the patients who are more prone to hypoglycemia. And as we all know, there are now several studies which suggest that the severe episode of hypoglycemia increases the risk of CV mortality in such patients in the short term. So it's very important that we should be avoiding hypoglycemia in such a high-risk patient. That's why in each patient, on each visit, we should be inquiring about the symptoms of hypoglycemia. Symptoms of hypoglycemia should be well explained to the patient. And particularly, we should be inquiring about the nighttime hypoglycemia. Nighttime hypoglycemia can present with atypical symptoms like the morning time drowsiness, or patient may have a night sweats, or maybe patient may have a nightmares. So we should be concerned when we should be asking about these symptoms. And if the patient has these symptoms, then we should be either asking patient to get a glucose level at 3 or 4 in the morning, or nowadays we have a continuous glucose monitoring or glucose profile, which we can advise to such patients, and accordingly we can adjust whatever the treatment we are giving to this. So basically, elderly patients, pregnant patients, patients who have a metabolic disorders, or patients who are fasting during the Ramadan periods. These are the situations in which hypoglycemia is very important risk, and we should be taking this thing into consideration. Definitely, we all know insulin is the drug which can cause hypoglycemia, and sulfonylurea is the drug which can cause hypoglycemia. Newer drugs like the DPP-4 inhibitors, SGLT2 inhibitors, does not cause hypoglycemia on their own. DPP-4 and basically SGLT2 inhibitors are again glucose independent action, and they does not cause hypoglycemia. Pioglitazone, metformin again per se does not cause hypoglycemia. Insulin and sulfonylurea are the two important things which should be using very carefully in the patients who are prone to hypoglycemia. So coming back to that most important slide, RSSDI therapeutic field, we go clockwise for each particular risk factor and prescribe the drug accordingly. In the red, we have drugs which can be used in a particular risk factor, and this hierarchy of therapy is depicted in a clockwise manner. If person is in the green area, we can use any drug. If yellow area, there are some drugs which we can use, and red area, there are limited drugs which has to be used in such patients. If a medical practitioner, even MBBS doctor, keep this picture on his table, he can, I think, very well prescribe diabetes treatment to the most of the 90% of the patients, and manage it very nicely. So when we see the patient in our clinic, basically we advise them for the lifestyle intervention modifications, metformin to all of the patients, identify 2 or 3 major risk factors or concern, and accordingly prescribe the drugs, identify the best choices available from the outer rings, just as we discussed, And ultimately, we have to take an individualized approach. And this RSSDI wheel stresses on the individualized approach in the management of the type 2 diabetes. So that's very important thing. So, and finally, one more thing, because there are a lot many confusion and lot many controversies regarding the alternative and complementary medicines. Physicians, diabetologists, and registered dietitians who are trained in the practice of modern system of medicine should not prescribe complementary and alternative medicines to the type 2 diabetic patients. We should discourage the patients to take the alternative medicines along with the whatever we are prescribing, because we does not know what other side effects may be. And apart from that, you do your best effort and bring the A1C to say 6.5 or 7, and patient will say, sir, 30 minutes yoga has worked. Now I'm doing 30 minutes yoga and my A1C is 7. You will forget about whatever effort you have put in. So to conclude, type 2 diabetes has a substantial effect on the individual and society health, quality of life, economical health, and everything. So diabetes management should be individualized according to the patient's current risk factors or financial status. And we should be treating patient taking a real world approach. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Sandeep. Sir, Dr. S.K. Sharma sir is there. Welcome, sir.
Sorry, yaar, I was delayed because of some work,
Yeah.
but sorry for the delay joining. But I was right from the beginning when he started, Dr. Talk
Yes,
started.
yes.
Dr. Talk, congratulations for a very lucid presentation. Absolutely
Yes,
smooth sailing. And thank you very much for highlighting some of the important aspects. As dear friends, you all know that these guidelines were developed by RSSDI and Endocrine Society of India jointly. And because many of us are members of both the, you can say, societies. So this is a collaboration, as Dr. Tak highlighted, that we Indians are different. We Indians are definitely different in many, many aspects. There may be some funny aspects where we are different, but in diabetes also we are different. So we, as Dr. Tak highlighted, we developed diabetes at an early age. We are having huge insulin resistance, and our complication rate is also very, very high. And in that context, if we have Indian guidelines, that will be very, very helpful. And the purpose of this meeting was that these guidelines should percolate to the last physician who is standing there in the periphery, in the small village or in the taluka or in the township, where our more or less similar type of treatment will be prescribed by all of us. So important point here was that we diabetic patients are having heterogeneous characteristics. So whenever a diabetic patient is sitting in front of you, you have to identify those patient's factor and disease factor. Patient factor means patient's age, patient's duration of diabetes, and patient's financial status, etc. But disease factors are also there. Short duration of diabetes or long duration of diabetes, less insulin resistance or more insulin resistance, obesity is there or less lean and thin is there, weight gain is there or weight loss is there. So there are risk factors, there are factors which modify our treatment. And that's why there are so many drugs which are now available. And these drugs are targeting one or two pathophysiological defects of our pathophysiology of diabetes, as Dr. D. Franjo highlighted, ominous octet, indicating that once you have a patient of diabetes, there are so many, you can say, pathophysiological defects working there. And now, because of beautiful drugs, group of drugs available, so how smartly we can give the best treatment to our patient. And here, important point again arises that many of these patients require multiple drugs. So you are not using 2 sulfonylurea in the same patient. You are not using 2 gliptins in the same patient. You are not using 2 gliflozins in the same patient. So you are choosing one from here, you are choosing one from there, because diabetes is a progressive disease. Ultimately, most of your patients will be on multiple drug treatment, and you have to select drugs in such a way that maximum improvement with minimum amount of drugs. So of course, combination therapies are required, but smartly choosing drugs, thereby you will get good control on, not only control, but also because you are targeting the pathophysiology. So the disease progression is also reduced and long duration of hyperglycemia management is achieved. So with that background, I think I should stop here and we will invite some questions or some comments with our friends, and over to Dr. Anand Vinawat and other, you can say panelists, they can share their views also.
I request our chairpersons, Dr. Aminav sir and Dr. Alok Gupta sir, to kindly their comments and
Thank you.
share their views as per Dr. S. K. Sharma sir.
Guys. So such a wonderful lecture by Dr. Tak, and I would really appreciate the people who have contributed in making this very easy diabetic wheel treatment pattern. And I suggest that such a pattern should be kept on the table of a consultant everywhere. A picture can be kept and it can be referred very easily whenever there is something which needs to be discussed. So it's a very good way, and very thoughtfully it has been made in a way that you can choose the first drug or the second drug or the third drug depending upon choices. There are many things we know about, but there are many people who don't tolerate such drugs. There are constraints not only about cost or other things, there are other things also which are of concern. And when we have choices, it is comparatively easier to treat. And using combinations, as Dr. Sharma said, is a time which is nowadays, it's very difficult to pull on with a single medicine for a longer time. Everybody needs a combination, 1, 2, or 3 drugs. And choosing combinations in a way that they are not duplicated is very easily depicted in this diabetes field. So I think things have been very nicely discussed by Dr. Tak, but still there are any questions?
Yeah.
Dr. Alok, you have any opinion?
Yes.
Or yeah, please.
I think nothing is left after this nice lecture by Dr. Tak, as well as the concluding remarks by the Dr. S. K. Sharma. So I think still diabetes is such a vast topic that there might be many questions. So let us invite questions from the audience. The one thing I want to say or request that it was a very good presentation. So I think the recording should be available on the YouTube or any other platform.
Have that, yes.
So
Yeah,
that in that way we can circulate such recordings to the maximum physicians.
Absolutely. Good idea. Very good idea.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
I think recording will be available and Dr. GD will, I think, make it available in the WhatsApp group, and then you can circulate amongst your peers in the periphery.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
information, Dr.
Yeah.
Arvind. Yes, please.
Yeah. And I think any question you can write, anybody who can write in the chat box also,
Or you
or
can
unmute yourself.
unmute, you can unmute and ask questions, because there are very
Ask the
few
question.
people left at present.
Yeah.
So if you have any question or comments, you can unmute yourself. Dr. Khivsara, you have anything to say?
I want to say one question that should we give 2 drugs, suppose initially, and wait for the control? Then if you increase the same drug, or you can add 3rd drug. Some doctors say we should increase the dose of the 2nd drug to maximum dose, or stop at the level and add 3rd or 4th drug.
So Dr. S. K. Sharma sir has highlighted very much regarding this sequential approach. Sequential approach is essentially not required at present because of several UKPDAs and several milestone studies have already told that there are so many defects in the diabetes, as Dr. S. K. Sharma sir highlighted. It is ominous octet, or there are so many defects. So one drug cannot be, sufficient to cater or to correct the defects, so many defects. So hence we have to use combination of the drugs. Now your question is sequential approach. You have to use one drug as a maximum dose and then you
No,
can
no.
add. No, this should not be there. You should not
Actually-
go with the maximum
two
dose
drugs
of one
at
drug. Yes.
The Dr. Arvind, he is
Yeah.
highlighting that you are using two drugs and patient is
drugs
not
initially.
responding. So you
Yeah.
omit those two drugs and start two new group of drugs. So
Oh.
that is usually
No,
not
no,
happening.
no. I'm
No,
asking-
sir. He is asking that two drugs, you can start using two drugs. If the control is not optimal, go with the maximum dose of those drugs and then start, then think if it is
Yes,
not,
yes.
still not under control, then you start the third drug.
Third drug.
So
Okay.
that approach is not appropriate. That is the thing. You cannot go with the maximum dose of one drug and then you start the third drug. No. You have to use the optimal dose of the two drugs. Is still not control. You have to start right. You should not go with the maximal dose of the drugs. Like last time, Dr. S.K. Sharma sir has told, and it is known fact that like glimepiride, 2 milligram glimepiride is okay. If you are not still having the control with 2 milligram, and if you increase to 3 milligram or 4 milligram, probably you will get only 5 or 10%, 5 or 6% total benefit or the control. So this is not a good idea of increasing the dose to the maximum dose. Go with the optimal dose and then not control, third drug and fourth drug, as Dr. S.K. Sharma sir.
My point here is, if we are discussing this up titration, this up titration is basically happening only with metformin, sulfonylurea and insulin. Most of these recent drugs like DPP-4 inhibitors, fixed doses, whether the sugar is very high or very low, you have to give same. I never use vildagliptin 50 milligram once a day. I always use it 50 milligram twice a day. I have never used sitagliptin once a day. Only once your renal profile is below 30, only then we can reduce it. Otherwise, SGLT2 inhibitors, similarly, same doses. Similarly, GLP-1 receptor agonist, same doses, whether the patient is having mild disease or severe disease. So, dear friends, modern drugs are having similar, you can say, doses. It is only the sulfonylurea which is having most difficulty, because as Dr. Arvind highlighted, once you are using half maximum doses, you are getting something like 70% of the effect of that drug. Once you further increase it 2 times, you are just getting 5 to 10% extra benefit. So we never use glimepiride more than 4 milligram in our patients. Similarly, we are not using more than 2 gram of metformin. Okay, insulin is a drug which is according to the sugar profile of the patient. Patient is insulin resistant. You have to use huge doses. Patient is insulin sensitive. You have to give very little amount of insulin. So most of these newer drugs are fixed dose drugs. And by the way, if you look into the pipeline is full of SGLT2 inhibitors, whether they are orally or now injected. Earlier they were injectable. Now Ribelsis will be available in short time. That is the oral semaglutide. That is semaglutide in oral form. So it is combined with a drug enhancer, absorption enhancer, and it will be available in 3 milligram, then 7 milligram and 14 milligram. So you uptitrate in monthly basis, and ultimately again 14 milligram will be the fixed dose you are using. And if you look into other newer pipeline drugs, all these drugs are either SGLT2 inhibitor or GLP-1 receptor agonist or GLP-1 with GIP or GLP-1 with glucagon or even tri-agonist, means GLP-1, GIP and glucagon agonist. So these type of drugs will be available, and there is no titration there. You have to start with, you can say, basal small dose. After a few weeks, the full dose will be going. You can't say that I will be using only small drug in Indian patient because they are having short weight or something like that. No, the doses are according to the once you reach the upper limit of those titration and upgradation, then you fix it and you continue with it. So you can't use like liraglutide more than 1.8 milligram per day. So that is how you are using these drugs. So newer pipeline drugs are all fixed doses. So this combination of drugs are required at present, but after some years, I will say you will be having a long-acting insulin, that is Icodec, where you are giving only one shot once a week. You will be having a SGLT2 inhibitor, either this dapagliflozin, empagliflozin, or canagliflozin, and then you will be having metformin, that is 2 gram per day, and GLP-1 receptor agonist, either oral or injectable, and you will find most of your patient will be controlled. Only problem is cost of the therapy. So most of these GLP-1 receptor agonists are a bit costlier, but they have their advantages also. So let's hope that things will evolve after 15 years of their patency. Luckily or unluckily, many of our Indian drug houses may start producing this GLP-1 agonist, because they are still having some 3 or 4 years left for their patency to expire. But once that is expired, I hope that these drugs will also be available in a cheaper price to our patients. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question or any other comments by Dr. Devda, Dr.
Sir, can I ask one question?
हाँ
Yeah,
जी,
yeah,
नीरज जी
Neeraj.
बताइए.
Yeah, Neeraj.
Yes, sir. Now the vildagliptin is available in OD doses.
सब अलग अलग जगह
So,
बैठा
Yeah,
SK शर्मा जयपुर बैठा
yeah.
अरोड़ा
And,
साहब
sir-
माइक को म्यूट कर लो.
Sir, there is a difference in efficacy between OD dose or twice a day dosing, or at what time it should be given if we use a OD doses?
Yeah, yeah. I
बताओ साहब,
think
अरविंद जी
the,
बताओ.
yeah, recent some of the pharmaceutical companies have actually done the pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics of the once a day vildagliptin doses. And I have seen those PD studies, and what they claim is that the PK/PD is of vildagliptin of DPP4 inhibition is to the tune of around 90%. That is something which is, I mean, vildagliptin twice a day is still having around 80 to 90% DPP4 inhibition, that is 24 hours inhibition. While vildagliptin once a day, this PK/PD is shown the more than 90% DPP4 inhibitors in 24 hours. That is very good. But probably, actually, I have not started once a day vildagliptin till date. But if the PK/PD studies showed this type of efficacy, I think we may think of using once a day vildagliptin in the future. I want comments from Dr. SK Sharma Sahab, Alok, and
I think,
other doctors.
Yeah. So I think you had done the great job in describing PK/PD studies. So many of these Indian pharma companies which are bringing this have done this PK/PD studies, and according to them, as again Arvind's statement is there, that they are having similar as compared to twice a day vildagliptin. So here actually the play of how you retard the release of this drug in a 24-hour pattern. So here important point again is that many a times the drug may not be available in the system, but the inhibition of DPP4 enzyme remains longer. So drug may be going very low, but the inhibited enzyme will not work till next day. And that's why they say that these drugs are working once a day. But again, as Arvind highlighted, many of us are not yet started, or we have started at a very little pace, because we are very happy with
Twice a day.
generic vildagliptin twice a day, and because you don't expect too much there except the convenience of once a day. But most of our drugs are given twice a day in our diabetic patient, because metformin we are always giving twice a day. So combining it with metformin or giving 2 tablets, one metformin, one vilda, is not causing any difficulty in our patient. And that's why we are very happy with twice a day also. But let's hope with some more experience, we'll be wiser and we'll be using it once a day only, the slow release or OD or extended release, what you call it. And let's hope it will be economical also. Dr. Amit Meenawat wants some.
Yes, sir.
I really feel that once a day vildagliptin does not give any other advantage than twice a day.
Yeah.
Because single use is a single drug utility is hardly, we know we need a combination. When you need a combination, you will have to add another medication.
Yeah.
So when you are using two medications, what is the idea of giving once a day vildagliptin? And where we
Absolutely.
have a lot of scientific proof on twice a day, in international papers and all data for more than 10 years or so, I think there is no added advantage of using once a day 100 milligram vildagliptin.
And
Sir,
the
just
question
one thing about the combination of vildagliptin with SGLT2 inhibitors. I don't say at present, but in the future, there may be a combination of SGLT2 inhibitor with vildagliptin, and that situation, I think once a day vildagliptin will work. We are not sure about, but combination of SGLT2 inhibitor with vildagliptin once a day maybe there in the future, but not at present.
But actually, again, as Dr. Minaut highlighted, our drugs start with our story of pharmacotherapy starts with metformin, and whether you are giving extended release metformin, that usually is given twice a day.
Yes.
Hardly we are using metformin as once a day.
Right.
Okay, so that's why most of our patients are taking most of these drugs twice a day. Like pioglitazone, we are giving only once a day, 15 milligram once a day. We don't give more than 15 milligram. But most of the drugs like metformin and sulfonylurea, all those things are given twice a day in our usual practice. So twice a day is not causing much of the concern to the patient once he is having long duration of diabetes. But afterwards, as patient's pill burden increases, then there may be some advantages of this once a day therapy. Now I want to take the ideas of all our friends here, how to increase the viewership and attendance of our these coordinator committees. What should be our approach? Because we see very little people are joining. At present, in this meeting, only 23 people were there, and 10 are not from the Jodhpur division. They were from other division, like myself and Arvind ji and many more. So how we can increase the viewership and attendance of these meetings, coordinator meeting? Because we have to go a long way. This is the first cycle. Then there are many more cycles in the form of insulin therapy in type 1 diabetes. Diabetes foot is another important point there. So how to increase the interest of our colleagues who are in the periphery to attend it? Because we have selected a time which is so convenient that you have finished your practice, you have taken your dinner, and now you can join it for a period of 1.5 hours or so. So how we can increase viewership? That is the important point.
Sir, I have one suggestion.
Yes.
Actually, we have to take it as in a small group. Like a Jodhpur region is a very big region. It includes so many districts and so many things. Second, like Jodhpur proper, then Pali proper, Jaisalmer proper, or like that. And that we have to give responsibility to some pharma company. You gather and give the information to all the that particular segment of doctors. Then also we have a good viewership.
It's a good idea, but problem is that pharma company will not be able to help at present because of this COVID. We are not interested in collecting the people in, let's say, in one hotel and a dinner.
No, sir, not collection. They have to give responsibility to just advertise it, because I have seen that group that Sandeep Boss has made. It includes most of the doctor from Jodhpur only. Though I have circulated this message in the Pali API group and everywhere in Pali group. But somehow you need some special work for that.
Yes, I think this is an important point that
once so we are
making a WhatsApp group, that region should be included wholeheartedly. Means
no, sir. Recently, I have done some this one on hypertension that with some company. They have arranged from Pali at least 60 doctors from periphery and everywhere. The topic was only about hypertension. So they can involve and they can go to periphery and just ask the peripheral doctors. And sir, we should not involve only